Hi, I'm Emily. I got a call at 10:07 a.m., the kind that doesn't just wake you. It empties something out of you. My mother was found curled outside a Circle K gas station in a blizzard. No coat, no shoes, just bruises. And the people who left her there, my brother and his wife, but that wasn't the worst part. What shattered me was realizing it wasn't the first time they'd hurt her. It was just the first time she couldn't lie for them anymore. So I drove 200 miles through snow and silence, straight into a truth I wasn't ready for. What do you do when the people who raised you are the ones you have to protect each other from? The snow had been falling for hours, soft at first, then heavy and determined. I could hear it pushing against the window pane like a restless animal. My apartment in Denver felt unusually still. I had a chamomile tea cooling next to my laptop, a muted true crime rerun playing in the background, and folders of legal drafts spilled across the kitchen table. Typical Tuesday night. I was halfway through an email to a client when my phone lit up. 3 missed calls, all unknown numbers. At first, I thought maybe it was spam or worse, someone from work needing last-minute forms. I was about to put the phone face down when it buzzed again, lighting up the darkened room like a flare. Emily's, a voice asked, male, calm, official. Yes, I said. This is Officer Hanley with Boulder PD. Are you related to a Margaret Vaughn? My breath stopped. It wasn't the name. It was the way he said it carefully, like I might shatter if he got it wrong. I'm her daughter. There's a woman who matches her description, he said. Found outside a Circle K gas station about an hour ago. She was in house slippers, no ID, no coat, disoriented. She's okay, just cold, but she wouldn't let us take her to the hospital. Said someone named Emily would know what to do. I blinked once, twice, trying to reconcile the image of my mother, Margaret Vaughn, the woman who Dee once told me I was a professional disappointment with someone left shivering outside a gas station in a Colorado blizzard. I'm 200 miles away, I whispered, then louder. Tell her I'm coming. It had been 7 years since I left Boulder. 7 years since I last stood in the same room as my mother. She hadn't called, written, or asked about me since I took a job in the city. She was the kind of mother who remembered birthdays when it gave her something to brag about and forgot them when she was mad. But something about that call, it cracked something open. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't even change shoes. I grabbed my coat, keys, and the first aid kit under the sink, and I was out the door. The roads were already frosting over. I slid twice within the first 10 blocks and kept going anyway. My windshield wipers fought the snow, smearing more than they cleared. I kept my hands tight on the wheel, eyes locked on the beams of light cutting through the storm. The silence inside the car was deafening. No music, no radio, just my thoughts rolling through like freight trains. The last time I saw Margaret, we were in the middle of a fight in the kitchen. I'd gotten a full ride to a law program in another state. She said I was abandoning her. Said, don't come back here if you think you're better than this family. I didn't. But tonight her voice echoed in my ears, panicked, unsure, stripped of all its sharpness. I imagined her, not as the woman who slapped a glass out of my hand at 17, but as someone's frightened mother in the middle of a snowstorm. Miles melted behind me, one treacherous stretch at a time. Gas stations were closed. Headlights were rare. I drove through towns I hadn't thought about in years, their outlines barely visible behind the flurries. I passed the welcome sign into Boulder sometime around 4:10 a.m. My knuckles were white from gripping the wheel. My breath fogged the windshield from the inside. I turned into the Circle K lot slowly, tires crunching over layers of compacted snow, and then I saw her. She was curled near the side of the building between a dumpster and a half-frozen soda machine. Her house slippers were soaked. Her fingers were bare. She had on what looked like an old robe layered over a stained nightgown. Her hair was disheveled and her lips were cracked as if they hadn't tasted water in days. I stopped the car so hard I nearly slid into a snowbank. I left the door open behind me as I ran. "Mom," I said. I hadn't called her that in years. She didn't react at first. Her eyes were glassy, blinking slow. Then finally, recognition flickered across her face. "You shouldn't have come," she rasped. "I'm fine, just slipped." That's all. My throat clenched. There was a bruise forming along her cheekbone, bluing like ink beneath pale skin. "Come on," I said, trying to lift her. "Let's get you warm." She winced when I touched her arm. Her body tense like she was expecting a hit, not help. A police cruiser sat idling nearby. The same officer who'd called me stepped out and nodded at me quietly. "She wouldn't let us touch her," he said softly, holding out a fleece blanket. "Said someone would come." I wrapped it around her shoulders. She resisted for a second, out of pride or stubbornness, I couldn't tell. But then she leaned into me just a little. I helped her into the car, cranked the heat, and turned the vents toward her face. For a while, we just sat there. The snow fell like confetti outside, blanketing everything in false serenity. She didn't speak. Neither did I. I handed her a bottle of water from the console, and she sipped at it like she hadn't tasted anything real in days. "She said some things," the officer said as he leaned in through the passenger window. "Not sure how much is accurate. Mentioned a son, said he hit her, threw her out. You might want to look into it." My stomach turned to ice. "Ryan?" I asked. The officer gave a slight nod as if unsure he should say more. "She said she was confused, that she imagined the whole thing," he added. "But she also said she didn't want to die outside. That maybe someone would remember her." I looked over at my mother. She was staring straight ahead, lips trembling, eyes wet. I reached out slowly and took her hand. "I remember you," I whispered. I didn't respond right away. The officer's words hung in the air like a fog that refused to lift. Ryan said she was confused, that she imagined the whole thing. My eyes didn't leave his face. Snow swirled behind him, catching on the brim of his hat, melting into the collar of his coat. I could see the discomfort settle in his posture, not from the cold, but from the truth he probably believed, but couldn't say out loud. I nodded once, slow. "Thanks for letting me know." The ride to the motel was quiet. The roads were still slick, but the plows had started making their rounds. I knew the place I was headed. The only cheap spot still open in this part of town. The kind of place where the heat worked half the time, and the carpet smelled like someone tried to cover mold with pine-scented cleaner. I checked us in without speaking more than necessary. Slid my license across the counter with a glance that said, "Don't ask." The clerk didn't. Margaret shuffled behind me, wrapped in the blanket the officer had given her. She hadn't said a word since we left the gas station. When we got to the room, she moved straight to the edge of the bed and sat like someone waiting for permission to breathe. I brought her a styrofoam cup of hot soup from the vending area. She stared at it like I'd handed her a loaded gun. I didn't press. I knew that look, the same one I used to give the school nurse when she asked if someone at home hurt me. Back then, I'd say no. Smile too wide, pretend everything was fine. I've become fluent in the language of pretending. She didn't touch the soup. Instead, she stared at the wall, then the lamp, then the floor, everywhere but me. I pulled the first aid kit from my coat pocket, crouched down beside her. Her fingers were chapped, split open near the knuckles. Her wrist was tender to the touch. "Looks sprained," I said more to myself than to her. She flinched when I wrapped it. "I didn't fall," she said softly, eyes fixed on the wall. I didn't say anything. She glanced at me then, just for a second. "Why did you come?" I stood, because you didn't deserve to freeze in a parking lot no matter what has happened. A long silence, then so faint I almost missed it. She muttered, "Don't let him take it all." I turned sharply. "What?" But her eyes were closed again, breath slow, as if she hadn't spoken at all. I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the second bed, staring at the cheap blinds swaying from the heater. Her phone buzzed once, an old flip model she'd had since I was in college. I checked it. 1 bar of battery left, 1 voicemail. I debated for a moment, then pressed play. It was Ryan. "You're embarrassing me, Ma. Keep this up and I'll make sure nobody finds you." My throat tightened. The voice wasn't angry. It was worse. Calm, flat, like he was giving instructions to a plumber. I gripped the phone so hard it creaked in my hand. I'd spent years building a life where that voice couldn't reach me. And here it was, crawling through the air, cold and calculated. I remembered being 16, locked in the downstairs bathroom, holding a towel to my nose, blood soaking through. Margaret on the other side of the door saying, "You always push him? He has more pressure than you. You should know better." She protected him, even from me. The ache wasn't just old. It was fossilized. And hearing it again didn't reopen the wound. It reminded me it never healed. I stepped outside the motel room, let the cold hit my skin like a slap. I didn't scream. I couldn't, but my body shook. Rage and clarity collided like oil and water. I had come here to help her. Now I knew I had to protect her. From him, I got back inside. Margaret was awake, eyes following me. I didn't wait. "Did he hit you?" She blinked. "He didn't mean to." I shouldn't have spoken out. Spoken out about what? She hesitated, her lips pressed together, forming a tight line. "The house," she said finally. "The accounts. I shouldn't have signed." I sank into the chair across from her. "What did you sign?" "Everything." I gave him access to the house, the bank. He said he'd manage it, help me with bills. Said I couldn't handle it anymore. "And you believed him?" I was tired. "Your father, when he passed, Ryan stepped up." I thought, her voice cracked. "I thought he'd take care of me." "And now you're sleeping next to a dumpster," I said too sharply. She flinched. "Don't talk to me like that. Then don't lie to me like I'm still 15. We didn't speak for a full minute. Then she whispered, "You always wanted to leave. I thought you were gone for good." "I was," I said, "until your name came up on a police report." I couldn't sit still anymore. I grabbed the keys, walked to the car, and sat inside. The steering wheel was cold. My breath fogged the window. I closed my eyes and let the memories come. Ryan holding a birthday party I wasn't invited to. Mom framing his high school award while mine collected dust in a drawer. The day I left for college, Margaret didn't even walk me to the door. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the investment. All those years trying to prove I deserved a place in my own family. And now it was collapsing because she finally saw what I always knew. I didn't come here for revenge, but I wasn't leaving without the truth. It was just past noon when I pulled into Ryan's driveway. The snow had let up, but the wind still had a bite to it, sharp enough to slice through my coat sleeves. I sat in the car longer than I needed to, staring at the house I used to call home. It hadn't changed. Same beige vinyl siding, same crack in the front step that Dad never fixed. From the outside, it looked sturdy, reliable, a place where everything made sense, but I knew better. Ryan had agreed reluctantly to let me come by to pick up some of Margaret's things. I told him I'd be quick. He hadn't sounded happy. Did he ever? But he didn't argue. Maybe he figured letting me walk around the place for 10 minutes was easier than drawing more attention to the mess he'd made. I knocked out a habit, then pushed the door open. It creaked just like it always did. The smell hit me first. Pine cleaner mixed with whatever Melissa had been cooking, some kind of sauce with way too much garlic. I stepped inside, wiping my boots on the mat, but still read, "Home is where the heart is." Even though we both knew that wasn't true, the hallway stretched out in front of me, and that's when I saw them. The photos. Dozens of frames lined the wall. Ryan as a toddler grinning with cake smeared across his cheeks. Ryan in a football uniform. Ryan and Melissa on their wedding day. All smiles and expensive hair. Their daughter, Avery, at every stage. Preschool graduation, ballet recital, first day of middle school. Even a framed print of Melissa at her college graduation, wearing a sash like she'd discovered something no one else ever had. I walked slowly, scanning every single frame, every sliver of life captured and curated. And then I found it, or rather what was left of it. An old family photo, the one from 1999. I remembered that day. It was taken outside the church after Easter service. I was wearing a pale blue dress that Mom said made me look washed out. Everyone else was in pastels. We looked like one of those catalog families, but in this version, the photo had been neatly cropped. My side of the frame, my shoulder, my smile, the tilt of my head gone, as if I'd never stood there. Margaret once told me that photo was too big for the wall. I used to think she meant it literally. Now I understood. I backed away slowly. My pulse ticked like a metronome in my ears. I tried to stay calm, to pretend this wasn't a slap in the face, but it was. Every frame was a reminder that I had been erased, one cropped memory at a time. Then came the voice I hadn't missed. "Didn't expect you to come back," Melissa said from behind me. "We managed just fine." I turned to face her. She was wearing a silk robe and holding a coffee mug like she owned the world. Maybe she thought she did. "I'm not here to chat," I said. "Clearly," she replied, raising an eyebrow. "Your tone hasn't softened with time." "You kicked her out in a snowstorm," I said, keeping my voice level. "That's not something people forget." Melissa rolled her eyes. "You really don't know half the story, Emily." "Then tell me," I said. "Tell me what she did to deserve the sidewalk." She sipped her coffee, letting the silence stretch. "She's been unstable for a while, paranoid, confused, accusing Ryan of things you and I both know he'd never do." I stared at her, willing her to blink. "Like what?" "She claimed he stole from her," she said flatly. "Said he manipulated her into signing over the house. Can you believe that? After everything he's done for her, she signed over the house." I asked, my stomach turning. "Oh, please," Melissa scoffed. "It's not like she was using it properly." The place was falling apart, and Ryan kept bailing her out. "She doesn't even remember paying her utility bills." I took a step closer. "And so you what? Decided to shove her out into a snowbank until she stopped being inconvenient?" She tilted her head. "You really think this is your moment, don't you? You swoop back into town and play the hero, but you weren't here. You don't get to judge what we've had to deal with." "You're right," I said. "I wasn't here, but I'm here now." She didn't reply. Just turned and walked back into the kitchen like the conversation was over. Maybe it was for her. I turned away from the photo wall and made my way down the hall to the closet next to the stairs. I remembered Margaret used to keep old photo albums in there. Scrapbooks. Boxes labeled by year, filled with ticket stubs and birthday cards and receipts from vacations we never went on again. The closet was a mess of plastic bins and Christmas decorations. I dug through them one by one, pulling lids, shifting boxes. And then I saw it. Cardboard, dust-covered, with black markers scrolled across the top. 1999. Emily, I dragged it into the hallway and opened the flaps. Inside, my high school diploma, still in the original envelope. A birthday card with no signature, just the words, "Proud of you," in slanted handwriting. And a college acceptance letter torn down the middle, then taped back together. I sat down on the floor, my legs folded under me. My hands trembled, but I didn't cry. I wasn't 16 anymore. I wasn't waiting for someone to tell me I mattered. I took out my phone and started taking pictures, each item one by one. Documentation, not nostalgia. This wasn't a trip down memory lane. This was evidence, not memories, evidence. Mrs. Lopez's words clung to me like damp air as I stood just inside the kitchen, staring at the tile floor. She said she saw blood, and the way she'd said it measured, uneasy, like someone who had watched something wrong unfold and never been able to name it, left me with a tightness in my chest I couldn't shake. The kitchen hadn't changed. Same pale yellow cabinets with chipping paint. Same outdated light fixture that buzzed faintly when it warmed up. The only new addition was a row of expensive-looking spice jars lined up above the stove. Melissa's touch, no doubt. Everything about this house still screamed familiarity, but none of it felt like home. I took a slow breath, then stepped out the back door, crossing the yard that separated our property from Mrs. Lopez's. Snow crunched under my boots, the path slick and uneven. It was late afternoon now, the kind of dull gray light that made everything feel like it was paused between day and night. I knocked twice on her screen door. It took a few seconds before I heard her slippers shuffle across the linoleum inside. When she opened the door, her eyes widened just slightly. "Emily." "Hi, Mrs. Lopez," I said. "Sorry to drop by unannounced." Her gaze softened. "You've grown into your face," she murmured. "You look like your daddy did. Serious, quiet. Come in, I've got hot water on." Inside the house smelled like lemon balm and old paper. I took a seat at her small kitchen table while she poured 2 cups of tea, her hands trembling slightly as she set them down. I didn't waste time. "You told me you saw my mother that night, outside, bleeding." She nodded, lips pressed together. "It was after 9. I just turned off the TV when I heard shouting next door. It wasn't the first time, but this time felt different." I went to the window, and that's when I saw her. I waited. She was stumbling like her legs weren't steady, wearing that awful robe, and there was red on her hand, on her cheek. She looked ... scared. "Did you see who was with her?" She shook her head. "No, but someone slammed the door behind her, hard." I set my tea down. "Did you report it?" "I should have," she said, voice dropping. "But it's your brother. And your mother's always been proud. Didn't want anyone meddling." I nodded. "Thank you for telling me." As I left, she called after me, "Be careful, Emily. There's history in that house, and not all of it's old." Back across the yard, I stepped back into the kitchen and scanned the room again, more deliberately this time. A plate rack hung over the counter, a drawer stuck slightly open. Margaret's words echoed in my head. The house, the accounts. Something happened here, not just physically, but something deeper. Some shift in power, some confrontation that cracked through the surface of their so-called harmony. I opened the junk drawer and found a receipt shoved behind an old takeout menu. It was from a law office dated 2 months ago. The notation, property transfer, final signatures. Brian had taken ownership of the house. Margaret's name had been removed. Back outside, I circled the house to the side gate. As I moved to unlatch it, I heard footsteps behind me. "You're digging," Melissa said flatly. I turned to find her standing near the garage, arms crossed, dressed like she'd been waiting for this moment. "That's what you do when someone's buried something," I replied. Her mouth twitched. "You think you're clever?" "I think I'm done being silent." She stepped closer. "You really believe you can unravel this? That anyone's going to take you seriously? You ran away from this family." "I didn't run," I said calmly. "I survived." She looked me over, eyes narrowing. "You're not just meddling. You're trying to undo everything we built." "No," I said. "You built it on someone else's pain. That house was never yours. That name never meant only Ryan." She laughed then, short and sharp. "Sweetheart, if you were smarter, you'd be married with power, not scavenging for relevance." I didn't flinch. Power doesn't erase proof, and I'm good at finding proof. She glared. "You'll regret this." I already regret not coming back sooner. I left her standing there, wind tugging at her silk scarf, and returned to the motel. Margaret was asleep, curled tightly on the far side of the bed. I sat down at the small desk, pulled out my laptop, and began organizing everything. Receipts, the voicemail, notes from Mrs. Lopez, photos of the box labeled 1999, Emily. Each item went into a labeled folder. I composed a short email and sent it to Ryan's office address. Subject line, Margaret has memory issues. But I don't, body, let's meet. No signature. The next morning, Margaret stirred as I poured her a cup of coffee. Her voice was scratchy. I heard your father once say, a drawer only breaks when it's opened too hard. I sat down beside her. What does that mean? Her eyes didn't meet mine. He pushed the drawer too hard. That night, I told him I was going to tell you everything. That scared him. My chest tightened. There was more. She nodded slowly. He said I'd ruin everything. That I'd make you turn on the family. That you'd use it against him. And were you going to tell me? She looked at me, and for the first time I saw fear in her eyes. Not of Ryan, of me. I didn't want to lose both my children. I swallowed hard. You never had both. You just chose one. She didn't deny it. That night, after she fell asleep, I checked the living room again, eyes scanning for anything that might hold more truth. I found a small baby monitor tucked behind a decorative vase. I checked the back. It had a micro SD card. I took it. At a local drugstore, I bought a card reader and plugged it into my laptop. There were 10 files. The latest was timestamped the night she was thrown out. I clicked play. I didn't sleep that night. After I clicked play, time twisted into something unrecognizable, more weight than movement. My eyes stayed fixed on the screen. My breath held hostage somewhere between disbelief and disgust. The footage wasn't cinematic. No dramatic angles, no clear audio. It was grainy. The lens tilted slightly off center, but I could see everything I needed. The timestamp in the bottom corner read 8:14 p.m. Margaret was standing near the kitchen counter. She looked small in that frame, like a guest in her own home. Ryan's voice filtered in first, louder than I remembered, barking about bills, about responsibilities. About her not being grateful. She said something about her account. About needing to check the withdrawals. Then, without warning, he moved toward her. The motion wasn't wild. It was practiced. A backhand across the cheek. She stumbled into the counter, her head hitting the edge with a sickening crack. Plates clattered off the drying rack. She collapsed to the tile floor. Seconds later, Melissa entered the frame, holding her phone, glancing at Margaret crumpled beneath her, and kept walking. I watched it again. Then again. By the third time, my hand was trembling so badly, I had to steady it on the edge of the table. This wasn't an argument. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was abuse, documented, time-stamped, and no one had lifted a finger. I uploaded the footage to a secure cloud folder and labeled it plainly. Mom 0114_evidence, no embellishments, no emotional titles, just fact, just the truth. Outside, the wind was still howling, the snow tapering off. Inside the motel room, I could hear Margaret shifting in her sleep. I stared at the still frame, her body on the floor, one hand curled under her ribs, and I hated myself for not coming back sooner. Morning came gray and heavy. I waited until she stirred before I slid the laptop toward her, pausing the video just before the moment of impact. She blinked at the screen. "What's that?" she asked. "Something you need to see." She leaned forward slowly. When she recognized the footage, she flinched, as though her body remembered before her mind could catch up. "I don't," she whispered. "Don't say you don't remember," I said. "I know you do." Her lips moved, but no sound came out. "You told me he didn't mean it," I said. "You tried to make excuses, but this is what happened." And she walked right past you like you were an empty coat on the floor. Margaret's voice finally found shape. "He's not a bad person. He's just overwhelmed." I pushed my chair back. "You've said that line for 20 years. When he broke my nose in 7th grade, you said it then too. When he locked me out in the yard all night while you slept barefoot in winter, you told me I must have provoked him. She looked away. Tell me something, I said, voice low. Did you ever believe me? Even once? Margaret's jaw tightened. You were always so loud, Emily, so needy. I laughed, bitter and small. Maybe I was just there. And that was too much. I didn't wait for a response. Back at the table, I drafted an email, no subject line. Just a still image from the footage. Margaret, mid-fall. The tile floor just inches from her head. I sent it to Ryan's work address. No message, no explanation, just the truth. It took less than 30 minutes for Melissa to call. What are you trying to do? She hissed into the phone. You want to ruin everything? You think a grainy video is going to change anything? I let the silence stretch. Then evenly, I haven't even started. Click. I leaned back in the chair, listening to the radiator hiss against the cold. It wasn't about revenge. Not anymore. This wasn't about making them suffer. It was about cutting off their access to her, to what they'd taken, to what they still believed belonged to them. I opened a legal template and started typing. Elder abuse, financial coercion, physical assault, names, dates, locations, attached evidence files. I had everything I needed. Then I picked up my phone and scrolled to a contact I hadn't used in years. Casey Hill, a nurse I used to work with who now did social work with the county. When she answered, her voice cracked with familiarity. Emily, is everything okay? No, I said, but I think I finally know what to do. We talked for 20 minutes. I told her everything, not just the incident, the pattern, the years of silence, the manufactured innocence, the property transfer, the medical records, the footage. She didn't interrupt once. At the end, she said quietly, I can file for an emergency evaluation. That'll trigger a home visit. If it holds up, it goes to court. Do it, I said. Today, I'll need a statement. I'll send it within the hour. By evening, I'd done more paperwork than I had in the last 2 months combined. My hands were stiff, but my mind was clear. Margaret stayed quiet most of the day, her eyes on the window like she was watching a storm roll in. I sat across from her, folders stacked high between us. You're doing all this for someone who never believed you, she said. No, I replied. I'm doing it for someone who deserves to finally believe herself. We didn't talk after that. I turned in just after midnight. The room was dark, the heater humming a dull rhythm. Sometime before dawn, I woke to the sound of the front desk phone ringing down the hall. I didn't move. I just lay there, eyes wide open, thinking about the courtroom, because I knew it was coming. And this time, I wouldn't be walking in as the forgotten daughter. The moment we stepped through the courthouse doors, everything slowed down. Cameras didn't flash. They blinked subtle and constant like eyes waiting to catch someone off guard. Reporters whispered into tiny microphones. Their eyes scanned me, then shifted toward Margaret, who walked beside me with slow, measured steps. She was dressed in one of my old jackets, simple but warm. It swallowed her small frame. Her silence was loud, but her posture upright, composed spoke volumes. We passed the metal detectors, the hallway echoing with the quiet buzz of anticipation. A woman from the clerk's office led us into the courtroom, where the judge was already seated. I could feel Ryan's eyes on me before I saw him. He was dressed to impress, of course. Dark suit, crisp collar, silver tie pin. A picture of restraint and professionalism. Like he was the one filing the petition instead of defending against it. Melissa sat beside him in a tailored coat, phone clutched in her manicured hand. Their expressions were controlled, but tight. This wasn't a meeting. This was war. I stood as the judge began the roll call and introduced the nature of the emergency hearing. My hands rested on the folder I brought. Documents, emails, timestamps, the video. My voice didn't shake when I presented the petition for legal guardianship, nor when I followed with a formal request for a restraining order against both Ryan and Melissa. I submitted the transcript from the footage. I offered the full recording as evidence. The judge nodded occasionally, flipping through the papers without comment. Her face gave away nothing. Then it was their turn. Ryan stood slowly, brushing imaginary dust off his sleeve. "Your Honor," he began, voice smooth and confident. "We're deeply concerned about my mother's well-being. But these accusations, they're the product of long-standing tension within the family. My sister has been distant for years. She struggles with emotional regulation. This entire case, is the result of resentment, fabrications from a bitter sibling." Melissa chimed in, therapy. "Emily's always had issues with attention. We've tried to support Margaret, but she's been confused, forgetful. We had to make difficult choices. I didn't react, just waited." The judge turned to Margaret. "Mrs. Vaughn," she said, "do you wish to speak?" The room stilled, breathless. Even time waited. Finally, Margaret stood. Her voice wasn't strong. It didn't echo, but it cut through the courtroom like glass. "I used to think pain meant love," she said. "That if someone yelled at you, it meant they still cared. If they hit you ... it meant they were close enough to stay. I don't believe that anymore." And then she sat. That was all. The judge cleared her throat. "We'll reconvene in 72 hours for formal deliberation. But for now, Ms. Vaughn will retain temporary guardianship. The restraining orders are granted." Outside, the air was crisp, the sun low behind bare trees. Before I could step onto the sidewalk, Melissa was on me. "You just humiliated your family." "No," I said calmly. "I protected mine. That video, you edited it. It's authenticated. I have copies and witnesses now. You don't get to play saint," she snapped. "You abandoned her for years." "I love to survive," I said. "You stay to control." She glared, but something in her eyes had cracked. The next day, #FreezeRout trended on Twitter. An anonymous audio clip leaked. Ryan's voice, that old woman's a liability. Freeze her out if you have to. I didn't leak it. Someone else had access. Someone else had had enough. And it spread like fire. Back at home, Margaret asked one day, "Why did you come?" I didn't answer the first time. Then, because for the first time, you didn't protect him. You let yourself fall. One morning, I found a letter on the kitchen table. There's no fixing what I ruined, but you showed up. You didn't let me freeze twice. That's more than I deserve. No apology, no signature, and still, it was enough. Sometimes the hardest truths we face are the ones buried inside our own family. Emily didn't set out to punish. She set out to protect. And in doing so, she uncovered a deeper truth. Not all blood is love. Not all silence is peace. Have you ever had to stand up to someone you once trusted completely? Let me know in the comments.